Hi everyone, I'm just going to share my screen. What an amazing set of questions and chats, and I really wish I could sit down and have coffee with so many of you, and I have done with Karen virtually a few times. I just think this has been such an interesting field to work in recently, and when I talk to early career researchers, they tend to talk about conferences and events as quite high pressure situations where there's a lot of competition and they don't like them. And I think that's such a shame, because I think when you come to events like this where people are, sort of joined around the idea of solving and exploring a common problem, it's just so inspiring. And it's a shame for science that we don't have that type of environment necessarily at conferences, or certainly that's the feeling that early career researchers report to me. So I thought that's my kind of takeaway from the moment about, how can we replicate some of this sort of sharing and things like that from here into the world of research conferences. So I'm talking about our Research Culture Awards, but I somewhat cheekily decided that I couldn't just talk about those in isolation, because actually, if from thinking about research culture over the past sort of 5-6 years, I've realised that the system is pulled so tightly at the moment that if you change one thing, at best, nothing happens because it's just so stretched. And at worst, you change one thing and something else, as some sort of perverse outcome, pops up somewhere else because you haven't thought it through in terms of how the system works. So I wanted to present a little bit of the context at Glasgow and how we're trying to do things across the whole system and think quite systematically about research culture and all the different things that feed into that. So the Research Culture Awards are one strand of that, but I don't think that they would be a solution on their own necessarily. So this is our research strategy. I'm not presenting things in a sort of chronological order. This was just published last October. And our 3 pillars of our strategy at Glasgow are collaboration, creativity, and careers. And those are all things I think that are crucial to thinking about research integrity, thinking about research culture, and to sort of, I suppose the idea of reward and recognition sort of underpins each of them. How do you reward efforts towards collaboration and team science, or research the way that you do research? And it's very much like what Karen said about recognising how we do research rather than just what research we do. And I think there's a very strong focus in our strategy about early career researchers, because we absolutely recognise that the new research fellows that we have, they have a huge amount of enthusiasm and vision for how they could be PIs and research leaders who embody a positive research culture. And I think we have to find ways to support them so that in 5 years' time, they're not just burnt out and feeling jaded and like they can't succeed within the system as it is. We've got the opportunity here to do something to support them in their careers, and also to support others going out into different fields and coming in from different fields too. So this is our strategy. And we've been thinking about research integrity and research culture and all the different concordats and drivers that there are in the UK to think about these things, instead of thinking about them as individual activities, which is quite tempting in universities, the way that we can be quite siloed. So somebody over here owns the Athena Swan agenda, somebody over here owns early career researchers, somebody else does research ethics and integrity. We've tried to sort of bring it all together. And we have a research culture action plan. Again, these aren't chronological thinking, but we did back in 2015, we did a review of research integrity, and that did sort of trigger a lot of thinking about, how do we reward and recognise the things that we value, and what is it that we value? And actually, when you went around Glasgow and asked people, what are we good at already? They would say things like collegiality. They did think that it was a collegiate environment, and we wanted to think, well, how do we recognise that, and how do we recognise it not just in the sort of the day-to-day, but in our promotions criteria and in our recruitment and everything that we do, and make sure that that's front and centre. And again, we've been thinking a lot about careers, particularly during COVID, and research recognition and open research. So all of these are pillars of our research culture action plan, and I'm not going to talk about them all, but if you wanted to go on our website, you can sort of see the detailed actions and how we know that we're successful with these sort of under each heading. So I mentioned our academic promotions criteria, and I think really this is the starting point when we think about our Research Culture Awards, because the Research Culture Awards, they're not just about giving an award to people for being nice. And I think if you don't communicate properly what awards are for, people are busy, they don't have time to take in information, and so they'll just sort of go to shortcuts and proxies. And actually, I think being nice is kind of the baseline. We expect that. We expect everyone to be nice, and that's not something we're going to give you a medal for. So in thinking about what's our award for, we were also thinking about our academic promotions criteria. So we updated these. We used to say change them, but actually we're like, let's say updated, because the system needs a little bit of updating in many respects. So we updated them in 2019. And we wanted to put parity of credit for research outputs for publications and research impact. And that sort of parity of esteem is something that you'll see reflected in our awards as well. We wanted to reward people who support the careers of others. So in asking people about collegiality, we're quite specific about what we mean by that. And we ask for it not as a separate thing, like how have you done research, how have you done teaching, how have you been collegiate, but actually in doing your research, what actions have you taken to support others with their research careers? In doing your teaching, what actions have you taken specifically to support others developing their teaching practice? What innovative things have you done to support others? And we are asking PIs how they support the careers of others, how they encourage others to undertake professional development. And so we now, from running now 2 rounds of promotions, we have lots of examples of where people have talked in quite specific terms about how they have, done, how they have been collegiate. And I think that's quite important. It's not just a fluffy, we want you to be nice, but we want you to take specific actions. And this year there's been a research funding initiative piloted in our College of Social Sciences, where they took that a step further and they enabled people to demonstrate that collegiality by offering grant funding to PIs, but only if they included an ACR in that. And it was just a small amount of pump priming funding to then allow them to go for a bigger grant, so that hopefully that more senior researcher would be mentoring the more junior researcher in that bigger funding pot. And I appreciate that, we're very lucky to have that funding, and not all institutions are as well funded. But I think it's important that where you do have funding, it's there to reinforce the strategy. And so by clearly articulating what the strategy is, people can see how, when they have an opportunity or they have some funding, it can support that. Going into the sort of the idea of narrative CVs and narrative indicator or narrative discussion in a promotions criteria, I think this is an area that we have a lot of thinking to do about as a sector. So we have introduced some areas of sort of narrative when evidencing your activity for promotions, but also some of our application forms for recruitment for our internal fellowship scheme, for example. And I think it's a skill that people are having to get used to. I absolutely agree with Karen that there are some amazing examples from other sectors, and I think it's something we just need to think more about. We're also doing a project on looking at narrative CVs, and that's something I'm really keen to talk to more people about. And I've been Googling some of the things that people have mentioned today. I'm not going to mention too much about open research practices, but they're there in our promotions criteria, they're there in our job descriptions, and we also look for quality over quantity. So asking people to highlight their top few papers or publications or other outputs, and describe what contribution they've made to them. So it's not just about a long list of publications. So that's our promotions criteria. And when thinking about our valuing of people's contributions to research, it's important that we support what we value, we enable it, we find ways to make it easy for people to do the right thing. We reward it, and that's through promotions or through other sort of HR reward channels. So we have things like in Glasgow, you can award somebody a £200 voucher if they've done something particularly nice in their department, that is valued. And we celebrate it, and that's what I'm going to be talking about next. And we also monitor how we're doing. So we publish not an annual statement, maybe a biannual research culture statement. It might become annual, but last year, I think with COVID, it just felt like not quite the right time to publish another one. But we have one in the pipeline for this year, and we do track how we're progressing, because there's no point doing all these actions if you're not seeing an impact of them. So I just wanted you to take a minute to think about what has someone done to support, promote, or recognise responsible research practice in your institution or in your school or your department. I want you to think about who that was. So what sort of role were they in? Were they a PhD student? Were they a research technician? Were they a research administrator, a professor? What sort of responsibilities did they have? Was this thing aligned to their current job? Was it innovative? Was it something you would celebrate? How would that look if it was something in a different discipline? And these are all questions that we were thinking about when thinking about our Research Culture Awards. We thought we wanted to introduce Research Culture Awards because we wanted to surface some of the good practice across the institution. And we had a lot of questions about what actually, how to do this award in a way that was inclusive, but also focused and helped to bring forward our objectives around recognising and valuing contributions. And I think all of these questions in here about who it is, what's their context, I've written it down about that Australian universities, the AR20, because I think that's really interesting. I think people's ability to do things within their particular context is something that's quite challenging for review panels to look at. And yeah, so these are all questions I'll try and talk you through where we are in our thinking with them. But the important thing for me is that when we have a review panel to look at our Research Culture Awards, and I hope when we do them for our promotions applications as well, and potentially for internal recruitment, potentially for the narrative CVs, I hope that panels start to have these conversations so that they can say, you know, what are your assumptions about different people at different stages and what they can do within their own context. So that's our key thing there. So I'm slightly nervous. I'm about to hit go on a video. I feel like it's not going to work. It might work. Could somebody just let me know if this is working? I'll just go back. No, it's not working. So I'm going to just flick to YouTube. Hopefully this works for people.
We can see it, but we can't hear it.
Can nobody hear it?
I'm afraid not.
I think what I'll do then is I'll just share the link in the chat afterwards so that people can see the video. So this video, it is from 4 of our Research Culture Award winners this year. And they're all at different career stages within the university. One of them, Susie, was a research assistant at the time. She's now doing a PhD. She won an award for thinking about how people think about their mental health when conducting research. So researchers who are working on particularly emotionally demanding areas of research, how are they supported to actually proactively look after their own mental health when they're doing lots of interviews or, you know, talking to people who have suffered from trauma? How do those researchers then come back and get supported? And she helped to initiate some institution-wide thinking on that. This is Lorraine. She is an incredibly modest supervisor. I think when you watch the video, you'll think, oh, she's just being a good supervisor. But actually the things she's done have been quite innovative, and we've used them in our research supervisor development online courses for researchers across the university. We also have someone in the video from the Institute of Cancer Sciences who talks about leading their diversity and inclusion committee. And we have had people being nominated for awards for a huge range of different reasons, from sort of promoting open research and organising hackathons to working with international partners and really thinking about how those partnerships are forged, rather than just what research can we do, but actually thinking about the how of the research. And Susie, also, who features in this video, is one of our facilitators for our PGR Research Integrity Workshop. So she's kind of contributing, as do many of our postdocs, to helping the next generation think through some of the challenges of research integrity. So we have lots of nice examples in the video, and I hope you'll go away and watch it. And also on our websites, we have the nominations from previous year, or we have the award winners from previous years. So we have people who have supported the development of early career researcher careers workshops, or done a whole range of different things. It's very broad. And I think that's probably the challenge of introducing any award, is that you can end up with a very broad set of things that people do. And so when we introduced these awards in 2019, we had the challenge of thinking, what are we trying to achieve with this award? And how do we best do that? So I'm just going to go back to my slides, hopefully. We'll skip the video. So we've now done three iterations of our Research Culture Awards. And these are institution-wide. They're awards for staff, and it can be any category of staff. So it could be research, it could be research staff, it could be academics, it could be technicians or professional services staff. And we really wanted the awards to be an opportunity to pull out the good practice across the institution and really celebrate it, showcase it, learn from it. And we wanted it to support the wider sort of research culture. So again, I think I can't emphasize enough how important communication is here. Leave it a year, come back and ask people, what were those awards about? And they'll say, oh, it was the awards for really nice people. And we're like, no, it's the awards for actually innovating in the space of research culture. And so the one thing I've really learned from this is that you have to keep communicating with people. What is the purpose of these awards? What are we trying to achieve? And how do they fit within the bigger picture? So, what are the other recognition methods? And it's not just an award for everything, but for a specific purpose and focus. And it's on a par with the kinds of research awards that we get. So when we were back in real life, we used to have the awarding at the same time as we had a sort of event for big grant holders that we used to have anyway at the principals' lodgings. It was very nice to have wine and like people talk about the great grants that they've got. And we just wanted to put contributions to research culture on a par with these massive grants and say, actually, their work is just as important. And so they were at the same sort of evening event. And I think that was one of the most important things. And we're slightly rethinking that now with COVID and not being able to have face-to-face events. But how do we make sure that these are valued in the same way as our teaching awards or our research and knowledge exchange awards? And what's the bigger picture that they're in? And then again, there are other recognition methods. If maybe the award isn't the most appropriate one, maybe it is about a manager's discretionary, this person, just needs a little thank you for the work that they've done. And one thing that we really struggled with was this idea of going above and beyond. So quite often when we started to write the criteria for the awards, people would suggest, will we write going above and beyond what your normal job is? And we really didn't want that, because everyone knows that academic staff, research staff, professional services staff, they're all already overstretched and overburdened. And we don't want people having to go above and beyond. What we want is exactly what Karen said earlier about recognising that different people have different strengths, that careers are diverse, and that different people will, focus on different things at any one time. So, maybe they are focusing on innovating in research culture, and that probably will be at the expense of something else. And we don't expect you to be doing everything and doing the research culture stuff, in your evenings and weekends. That is a recognised valuable contribution. So we absolutely axe the above and beyond stuff. But we are still really mindful of the workload, and that a lot of these people probably are doing those things in the above and beyond their day-to-day. And we do want to say thank you to them for that. And I think it is nice for them to be appreciated. But not just more boxes. So we were keen to learn from other sectors, which again has been a theme this morning. So we've invited people from other sectors to sit on our awards panel. We have quite a diverse awards panel. And one of the challenges for us is working out and communicating to them what is valued. So what counts? In some areas, they would read it and think, well, this person's doing open research, but isn't that just a normal thing? Or that just sounds like research, particularly for people who don't understand it. They're thinking, well, I don't know what that is, but it sounds like research. So why is that in the Research Culture Awards? And trying to make sure that there's a sort of common approach to understanding what's valued across disciplines, across career stages, across people's own individual biases. That's been quite a big challenge for us in thinking about our review panel. And trying to really get it across to even the applicants that it's not about the research you do, but about how you do it. And we have, thought hard about who can be nominated and, what people write in the nominations. We previously had an award for good mentoring, and I have to say I was quite dismayed when I saw some of the applications that said things like, the proof is in the pudding. This PI, an academic, has mentored 7 research staff to become academics. Therefore, they're amazing as a mentor. And I was thinking, well, really, what if they'd gone on to a whole variety of other very valid jobs? Would they still be amazing as a mentor? What about their mentoring helped them go on to be academics? And so I think if you have an award for anything, you have to make sure that people understand the words. And we did a lot of workshops around Glasgow. We did a roadshow where we went out and said, here's our definition of research culture. What does that mean to you? What do these words mean? What do you think this is? How can we improve on this definition? And that was really the first important step of having this award. And yeah, so working with the panel to ask things like, if a PhD student does something, or well, so our awards aren't open to PhD students, but Susie, who is now a PhD student, when she did something as an RA, it's a lot more difficult for her to get traction institution-wide than it would be for someone who's head of school or someone who sits in a central unit in professional services like myself. So trying to account for the opportunity that somebody had, or there are departments and areas, I'm sure, in all universities where there is a pretty toxic culture. So if someone does something even small in that culture, is that more awardable than somebody who, and we have some areas in Glasgow where they have an amazing culture. They're like gold Athena Swan. They're all thinking about all the things that they do and how they can improve their culture all the time. So if somebody is on one of those committees thinking about how they improve the culture, how do you weigh up those things? And I don't have the answers, but all I have is these are the things that we discuss in the panel, and we try to account for and sort of explore where our biases are. And it does get messy, and no award is perfect, but you have to take on these challenges. So that's my advice on awards. And we have now, since December 2020, launched a lab for academic culture, where we're thinking about all of these different things, but in the context of academic careers, so not just research, because people don't just do research, they do so many other aspects of their lives, and they all come together. They don't just think about themselves in silos. So we are working on a whole range of different projects, and we're just really happy to be able to talk to other people and sort of find ways to sort of progressively advance the sector as much as we can, and pilot different things. So we're piloting things to do with narrative series, to do with recruitment and how you value the career support for others, and yeah, a whole range of different things. So that's me, and I'm open to questions now. So I'm just going to stop sharing. I will share the video link at some point so that you can go home and watch it. Homework, 2-minute homework.
Elizabeth, thank you very much. That was fascinating. It's good to hear about the practical steps that research organisations can help support development in a healthy research culture. And yes, having watched the video after a practice session tomorrow, I do recommend having it when Elizabeth sends through the link. Okay, we've had a load of questions come through, and let's pick some. Okay, Rob Ackrell asks, how was your HR department involved in these changes around strengthening the role of research culture and promotions? How accepting were they of this type of shift?
Oh, well, I mean, our HR department is made up of individuals, isn't it? So some were accepting and enthusiastic, and some weren't. I mean, we have a research culture and careers group in the university where we have the people who are actually able to make things happen and do things. So we have HR professionals on that. We have research grants managers, we have researcher development, research policy people, and we use that as a really useful forum to share, here's what we're thinking, how might this happen. The HR professionals sit on all the promotions panels. They can tell us if that's unrealistic, or they have so much knowledge, and they sit on a lot of the recruitment panels. So we work really closely with them, and yeah, I mean, I'm sure it had its challenges, but helpful challenges, because they know where the challenges are, like where we could get sued or things are inconsistent, and where we're like the enthusiastic, let's change everything. They have a little bit of reality that helps us.
Yeah, Thank you. An anonymous attendee asked, well, thank you for some really thought-provoking insights, and asked, do the changes to promotions, sort of procedure and progression, cover professional services roles as well, or is it purely for academic staff?
Well, this is the academic promotions. It's actually our professorial promotions criteria. So we started there rather than doing everybody at once. And you know, that's not to say that we won't necessarily like learn from that and introduce it for other promotions criteria too. Professional services at Glasgow, and I don't know about other universities, but I imagine they're similar mostly in the UK. You don't tend to get promoted. So you know, you're employed at a particular grade, and you do that job at that particular grade, and you can't get promoted. But we know we do have professional services who get awards or, you know, £200 vouchers.
Thank you.
On the head. Oh, there was one thing I was going to say about the awards, though, that actually I found quite challenging the first year we ran them, where a few academic staff nominated professional services members of staff purely for being nice, and I found it quite upsetting as a member of professional services staff that maybe some of our professional skills weren't really being recognised. Yeah. And it was just this person's just so nice when I send them a grant at the last possible minute. Like, oh, so that showed us that we had some work there to actually, you know, start to articulate where those professional services colleagues are actually innovating.
And maybe people should be trying to not send grants at the last minute if they can avoid it. Another question about the award scheme. Do you monitor subsequently to see if, you know, having been the sort of the recipient of the award has had an impact both individually and on the things they were awarded for doing? What's the sort of follow-up look
like? I think for the individuals, it's usually confidence that, you know, they can, you know, it gives them a little bit of a louder voice, and that confidence then the next meeting they go to. Particularly some of the people did not realise that the things that they were doing. So when they then saw the nomination, they were like, oh, I just hadn't quite realised I was doing all these things. So yeah, I think that's an interesting question. Maybe we should do more follow-up. And part of the challenge, I think, is that some of the early career people who got awards are on short-term contracts, and so they're no longer in the university, and that's a shame. But some of them are, and keeping on doing good work. Yeah.
Thank you. Karen Desborough asked, well, she says Glasgow is doing fantastic work about promoting and supporting responsible research practice, but could creating financial incentives, the award, have a negative effect? Could it encourage unhealthy competition amongst researchers and sort of go against creating a sort of more healthy collaborative research environment? You know, as with all incentives, can there be negative unintended consequences?
Yeah, I mean, so we give people a £1,000 prize if they get the award, and actually most people aren't even aware of that, and they don't nominate themselves. Someone else, well, some people nominate themselves, and they can do. It's usually other people that nominate them. I don't think by the time, because you get taxed on that, by the way, so depending on what pay grade you're at, you might get taxed at the higher tax rate or the lower tax rate, or not at all if you're, you know, not working. So by the time that gets taxed, I don't think anyone's going to massively change their entire personality and way of working for the sake of like £600. I just think it's nice. It's a recognition. Yeah.
Thank you. Nicola Wilson says, we recently introduced a research culture award in our institution, but received very few nominations, with many people saying they were put off by the need to write why they were nominating the individual. How do you encourage individuals to make nominations? And also, do you change the members of your panels regularly?
So we have about 30 nominations a year, and the first year we asked people to write 600 words and give us 2 pages of supplementary information, or maybe it was 1,000 words the first year. And then the next year was during COVID, so we said, right, scrap the 2 pages. We know everyone's really busy. It was the start of, like, you know, everyone changing their teaching online, and just write 600 words. And you know, I got the usual complaints from particularly the College of Arts that we cannot write only to 600 words, and they would tell me that in their promotions applications there was a 10% kind of allowance, and so that was quite interesting culturally, because obviously there was people that were like, well, I wrote 599, and other people wrote 700 because they thought that would be culturally acceptable. So I think we are thinking about the workload and the timing. This year we changed again with everything happening with COVID, and I think it kind of clashed with people writing promotions applications, and yeah, I think they maybe didn't quite have the time. So we do think about the timing. We also get our research deans really strongly involved, and our research culture and careers committee, you know, we share who's been nominated with them. And, you know, each year they do go out and think about who can they nominate or who could they encourage to be nominated. We do have a few heads of school who nominate people every year, which, you know, I think is lovely actually, that they go to that effort. And we tell everyone who's been nominated that they've been nominated.
Yeah, thank you. Helen Young asked about diversity of careers. She says, a key challenge in advancing a healthy research culture is to allow all researchers to flourish and contribute in an appropriate way, for example, taking out neurodiversity. What's your views on how we can encourage and support varying contributions and working styles rather than setting unrealistic and discriminating sort of generic expectations for researchers? That's a big question.
Yeah, sorry, my mind's still on the previous one as well. It didn't answer it. Yes, we changed some of our panel members, but we keep some consistent. So yeah, we try to diversify, but also keep a few people who have been previous years. In terms of this question, it is a huge question, and I think we are absolutely not there yet. Like we try to embed things in our recruitment training or our supervisor development, which, you know, helps people to think about different ways of working. And we've got like a few projects happening at Glasgow at the moment to do with neurodiversity in research or disability. We have, you know, students who have created videos about, you know, the sorts of reasonable adjustments that they need in the lab. And I think this actually really feeds into the narrative CV thinking, because if I'm helping researchers to write about breaks to their career or challenges that they've had in their career, how much should they share? How much should they be expected to share about what those challenges are, whether it's COVID, disability, caring responsibilities, or do they just focus on the impact on their research and how they picked up from that break? And I think there's loads there to discuss, and I'd be really, really happy to chat to anyone that wants to chat to, or indeed has all the answers, because that would be amazing.
Thank you. I think the point about sort of communicating things is very important. There are so many amazing initiatives going on that being done by employers such as Glasgow, by funders, by publishers. One thing at UK Radio a lot is people aren't necessarily aware of stuff, that, you know, they kind of feel the old ways are going to be with us forever because and this isn't Glasgow, you know, you communicate internally about this an awful lot, but sort of a lot of the broad initiatives aren't being publicised enough, so people think there is still only one potential career path and one right way to do research. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. That was fascinating. I should say that we have had a lot of questions for both this session and the previous one we haven't had a chance to address. We're making sure that we'll look at the chat stream afterwards, and if there are issues that can't pull up, we'll talk and speak and see how we can address those another way. So, Elizabeth, thank you very much. I'll make sure we circulate your video link at the end so people can watch that afterwards. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you.